Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. At around 3 a.m. on July 18th, 2021, 35-year-old Elijah Snow and his wife Jamie rolled out of bed in their home in Arlington, Texas. Despite the early hour, their tiredness barely registered. Instead, both of them were overcome with excitement. Today was the start of their dream vacation to the Mexican city of Cancun, and in just a few short hours, they would be relaxing in paradise. Elijah and Jamie had planned the trip in celebration of their 10th wedding anniversary, and had booked a hotel to match the significance of the occasion. For the next week, they would be staying at the 5-star Royalton Chic Suites Cancun, a luxury $400 a night all-inclusive resort located in the heart of Cancun's famous hotel zone. Not only was the hotel right on the beach, it offered a number of amazing amenities and packages, including unlimited dining, drinks, and room service. The 35-year-old couple had looked forward to the trip for months. In the weeks leading up to it, Jamie had even joined a private Facebook group for the Royalton's hotel guests, chatting with other members who would be traveling at the same time as her and Elijah. It was going to be an anniversary to remember for the rest of their lives. Though this would turn out to be true, it was not in the way that the couple could have ever imagined, as less than 24 hours after arriving in Mexico, Elijah would be dead. Before we get to the main part of today's story, if you find our videos interesting and informative, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this. It really helps us to continue building the channel, and if you've watched a few of our videos already, you might not even realize that you're not subscribed. While you're there, don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get to the video. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, then you might be thinking to yourself right now that it's fairly unusual for us to be covering a case like this in depth that's so recent. And you'd definitely be right. Generally, we like to wait until a good deal of information has been released before jumping into a story this way, choosing instead to cover it on our Crimes of the Week or Crimes of the Week International series. In fact, that's how we first came across this story, when we covered it for the Patreon-exclusive extended version of our show last summer when it was first reported. However, as you'll see, despite many mysterious details, this case currently appears to be at something of an impasse, with the investigation being closed without providing any real explanations or insight. That's why we ultimately decided to cover it today, because without sustained public interest and pressure, it very much feels like Elijah Snow's death is doomed to remain a mystery. Elijah Snow was born in August of 1985 in Fort Worth, Texas. He grew up in neighboring Arlington and was known as an athletic kid, one who especially enjoyed playing soccer with his friends and family. After graduating from Tarleton State University in 2010 with a nursing degree, Elijah would eventually go on to get a job as a firefighter, working for the Arlington Fire Department. It was a job that was extremely important to him, and one that seemed to run in his family. Just months before he was born, Elijah's father, Ronnie, died tragically in a training exercise while working for the Arlington Fire Department. And when Elijah's mother later remarried, his stepfather, David Ojeski, also worked as a firefighter and trained EMT in Texas. In 2006, Elijah met his future wife, Jamie. The two quickly bonded and became best friends before falling in love and getting married in 2011. Those that knew Elijah and Jamie said that you could feel the love that the two had for each other when they were together, and that they thought of themselves as soulmates. In 2015 and 2016, Elijah and Jamie welcomed their 2 daughters into the world. Though Elijah was initially apparently terrified by the thought of being a father to 2 girls, it soon became clear to him and to everyone else around him that he was more than up to the task. According to Jamie, he embraced fatherhood with open arms, becoming the, quote, absolute best girl dad, who was known for learning his daughters' gymnastic routines, letting them put makeup on his face, and doing whatever he could to make them laugh. Elijah took complete advantage of his schedule as a firefighter to be the most hands-on dad that he could, never missing a sports game, event, or any other thing that his girls were involved in. All that being said, even the most involved parents need an occasional break, and so it was that in the summer of 2021, Elijah and Jamie planned some much-needed rest and relaxation time for their upcoming 10th wedding anniversary. Where better, they thought, than an all-inclusive 5-star resort in Cancun. While Jamie would later say that she had heard about the potential dangers of traveling to Mexico, like the millions of other tourists that travel to Cancun each year, she wasn't particularly worried. After all, most problems encountered by travelers happened off of the resorts, and she and Elijah planned to remain safely within the confines of their all-inclusive. Little did Jamie know that this feeling of safety would soon be completely shattered. After waking up early on the morning of July 18th, Elijah and Jamie headed to the airport, where they boarded their flight to Cancun. The trip took about 2.5 hours, and once they landed, it was an additional 30-minute ride to the Royalton. The couple checked in around noon, grabbing their room keys and heading up to their suite just long enough to dump their bags. After that, they wasted no time, going directly to one of the resort's pools, where they ordered some margaritas and began to enjoy their day. They stayed by the pool for the rest of the afternoon, enjoying the sun, the beachfront views, and a healthy sampling of the resort's premium cocktails. It was exactly the kind of relaxing start to their trip that the couple had hoped for. When the sun began to set, Elijah and Jamie headed back to their room for a second time. After quickly changing, they went for dinner at the resort's Asian-themed restaurant. Somewhere between 9 and 9:30 p.m., the pair finished dinner and decided to end off the night at the hotel's first-floor bar. While it's not clear exactly when it happened, we know that sometime after arriving at the bar, Jamie and Elijah got into an argument. We don't really know what the dispute was about, but according to Jamie, it was extremely minor, and we can likely chalk this up to the fact that by this time, she and Elijah were basically running on no sleep and had been drinking all day. In any case, following the argument, Jamie decided that she was ready to call it a night and headed back up to the room to get some sleep. Elijah said that he was going to stay behind for one more drink. Jamie wasn't too worried about this, considering that all of the resort's bars were forced to shut down early anyway, in accordance with the city's pandemic protocols. Sources contradict each other about what time exactly this would have been, but based on the reports we came across, it was either 10:30 or 11 p.m. that night. Exhausted, Jamie went back to their room and quickly fell asleep, believing that Elijah would be there in less than an hour. However, when Jamie next awoke several hours later, she was startled to find that she was still alone in their room. It was now around 4 a.m., a full 5 hours after Elijah should have been back from the bar. Concerned, Jamie left the room and began to walk around the hotel looking for Elijah, checking every floor. This was a fairly easy job, as almost all of the resort's guests were asleep, and if Elijah were walking around somewhere, he would have been easy to spot. At some point during this search, Jamie also logged on to the private Facebook message group that she had joined for guests of her hotel, and posted messages asking anyone if they had seen her husband. After receiving no replies, and checking everywhere she could think of within the resort, she notified the Royalton staff that Elijah was missing. An expanded search effort was launched from here, and at 8:30 a.m., Jamie got in contact with Cancun police, explaining to them everything that had happened up until that point. What Jamie didn't know, however, was that Elijah had already been found more than an hour earlier by a gardener who was on his way to work. Tragically, the 35-year-old firefighter was dead. He had been found stuck halfway inside a ground-level window that led to a locked employee bathroom. At the time he was discovered, Elijah was lying stomach down towards the window frame. Most of his torso was through the window into the bathroom, with his feet dangling above the floor. His arms, shoulders, and head, meanwhile, were fully out of the window facing outside. Perhaps most bizarrely of all, this window wasn't at the Royalton. It was at the hotel next to where Elijah and Jamie were staying, a resort called the Sunset Royal Beach. More on that in a minute, though. While we know that Jamie was told about Elijah's death sometime in the middle of the morning on July 19th, sources once again contradict each other when it comes to how exactly the news was broken to her. Some reports state that Jamie was told by a member of the Royalton staff, while others claim that she was informed by Cancun police after being called to the station at approximately 11:30 a.m. It's not clear which of these accounts is actually true, though we do know that Jamie did travel to the police station around this time. Once at the station, Jamie said she received conflicting information about her husband's death. Initially, she was told that Elijah had simply, quote, fallen between the walls of the neighboring resort. However, this was later changed when information about Elijah being stuck in the window surfaced. After that, police reportedly told Jamie that her husband had died while trying to climb through a bathroom window. According to them, he had gotten stuck and, unable to free himself from the tight space or reach the ground inside, had suffocated. An official cause of death would soon follow, when a local medical examiner ruled that Elijah had died from, quote, mechanical asphyxia due to thoracic abdominal compression. The confusion reportedly only continued when it came to an explanation for the manner of Elijah's death. It was clear to Jamie that almost immediately, investigators were pushing the idea that the death was accidental, saying that there were no signs of foul play. However, according to Jamie, she was also told by a detective at the station that day that Elijah's death would be labeled as a, quote, murder without suspect. Despite these alleged contradictions, only a few hours later, investigators settled on what would be their singular theory going forward. Elijah had wedged himself into the window, possibly while looking for a bathroom. As an explanation for why he had chosen to seemingly break into an employee bathroom at a totally different resort than the one he was staying at, police blamed his level of intoxication, pointing to the fact that he had been drinking all day. According to them, the case was a tragic accident, nothing more. Though the investigation would officially remain open for a few months from here, at least publicly, as far as we can tell, authorities would never deviate from this stance from this point forward. This was against the repeated objections of Elijah's family, who pointed to several details police had reportedly overlooked. In order to get a better understanding of the mysterious circumstances of Elijah's death, it helps to have a good sense of the layout of the area where he was found. As such, we'll do our best to describe things to the best of our abilities, using the most helpful pictures we can find that were publicly available. Okay, so if you're standing on the beach and looking at the Royalton, the Sunset Royal Beach Resort is located directly to the left. Between the hotels is a gap that we estimated using Google Maps to be about 80 feet or 25 meters. In that gap is a cabana area belonging to the Sunset Royal Resort that begins at the beach, but that extends backward into a sort of green space/courtyard. If you head back even further, you'll eventually get to an outdoor venue space where the resort reportedly holds things like concerts and other events. Based on the information we were able to find, in order to get to the window where Elijah was found, you need to walk through the venue space until you reach an area where there is a small gap between a part of the venue structure and another tall concrete wall. This gap only appears to be a couple of feet wide, and in the middle of it is a metal post held in place by a cement cylinder that mostly blocks this gap. The gap itself is apparently not obvious, and even after going through it, the window where Elijah was found is not immediately visible. You would still need to walk past another metal post and up a small rocky hill before turning a corner where the window is. The window itself is about 2 feet off the ground and is next to a couple of other similar windows. However, that's not all. Apparently, all of these windows had been covered with sheets of plywood that had been drilled into the wall of the structure, making their existence even less obvious. Unless, of course, you already knew that they were there. When Elijah was found, all of the windows except the one he was discovered in remained covered by these sheets of plywood. At the scene, investigators reportedly recovered a long, flat piece of metal resembling a crowbar that had likely been used to wedge the piece of plywood off of the window where Elijah was found. That piece of plywood had been placed just next to the uncovered window. Given all of this information about the window and its relatively secluded location, it begs the question as to how Elijah would have come across it in the first place. Based on everything we've read, there are 3 possible routes he could have taken. The first would have likely been to scale the fence that runs the lengths of the property line dividing the Royalton and the Sunset Royal Beach near the area where the window is. The second would have been to enter the Sunset Royal Beach through the hotel's front entrance, coming in from the street and walking through the property until reaching the outdoor venue. The third would have been to go from the beach, walking through the cabana area and courtyard before coming to the outdoor venue from the opposite direction. Just for reference, we estimated based on Google Maps that this distance would have been about 360 feet or roughly 110 meters from the beach. While all of these routes seem possible, things get a bit harder to explain when you put them in the context of the official theory police gave for Elijah's death, that he got stuck while searching for a bathroom. Let's start with jumping the fence. This seems to be the least likely explanation of all if Elijah was simply looking for a bathroom, as there would have been no obvious signs or reasons to believe that a bathroom would be on the other side of a random fence. If he instead got to the window by entering the Sunset Royal Beach through the front of the resort, it's unclear why he would have gone so far before encountering a bathroom. You'd think that he would have come across at least one other bathroom on his way through the actual hotel. If Elijah walked from the beach, why would he have taken this very specific route to find a bathroom, instead of, say, heading directly to the Sunset Royal Beach Hotel itself? While we know that there was a concert held at the outdoor venue on the night of Elijah's death, according to reports, this would have ended roughly an hour before the bar at his own hotel closed. Finally, none of these routes that Elijah could have taken explain why he would have left his own hotel in the first place if he was looking for a bathroom. According to Jamie, Elijah should have been able to find the bathroom in their resort, and if he was drinking at the bar in their hotel, it would have made no sense for him to leave and travel to the hotel next door. If alternatively he had already left the bar at this time, perhaps to go for a walk on the beach, those that knew Elijah said that he wouldn't have wasted time searching for a bathroom, and probably would have just found a semi-private area to go outside. If you're like us, then at this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, wait, didn't either of these hotels have surveillance cameras? Couldn't they just check the footage to find out where Elijah was last seen before his death? Well, it turns out, this is exactly what Jamie and the rest of Elijah's family also wanted to know. However, obtaining this footage would be far easier said than done. According to Jamie, from the very beginning of the investigation into Elijah's death, she hit roadblocks both with the resorts and with investigators. When she asked an employee at the Royalton if she could review their camera footage, she was reportedly given a number of excuses about why she wouldn't be able to do so. At first, she was told it was because the footage was involved in the investigation into her husband's death. When she replied that this was even more of a reason why she should be allowed to see it, employees changed their story, this time stating that the hotel management wouldn't allow it. The story was almost identical over at the Sunset Royal Beach. First, they said it wasn't possible because of hotel policies. Later, they said that none of the cameras in the area were working. Meanwhile, Jamie was also struggling to make headway with police, who were apparently similarly withholding when it came to almost every detail of the case. Jamie said that when she first arrived at the morgue, authorities wouldn't even allow her to view Elijah's body. That's when a hotel employee that accompanied her to the morgue reportedly typed into her phone, quote, "Do you have any money?" Completely taken aback, Jamie was allegedly only allowed to see 4 photos of her husband that had been taken by employees at the morgue. They reportedly charged her $100 apiece for the 4 images. Despite the horrifying conditions under which Jamie reportedly obtained the photos, it was here that she first began to develop her own theory of the case. This was because these photos seemed to show evidence of something much more sinister at play. In particular, they appeared to show injuries not at all consistent with an accidental death. This was when Jamie began to believe that her husband had been murdered. In addition to the images that Jamie obtained from the morgue, she was finally able to get a closer look at Elijah's body when it was moved out of police custody and into a local funeral home. Once there, she and Elijah's stepfather, David, who by this time had also flown to Cancun, proceeded to take their own photos of the body in an attempt to detail the many suspicious injuries they believed they were seeing. These included scratch marks on Elijah's arms, bruises, and apparent cuts to his head, and perhaps most disturbing of all, bruises on his inner legs that Jamie would later state looked like shoe marks. None of these injuries appeared to be consistent with Elijah simply getting stuck in a window, despite the medical examiner and police in Mexico stating that there were no signs of foul play. It's worth pointing out here that the images that Jamie and David took were later given to an American pathologist named Dr. Judy Melinek by the news outlet Inside Edition. When she examined the photos, Dr. Melinek agreed with Jamie and David's conclusions that the window did not explain many of Elijah's injuries. A final couple of points worth mentioning here are that when authorities discovered Elijah's body, part of his face, including his mouth, was reportedly covered in dirt. Also, when his wallet was returned to Jamie, everything was inside except for about $100 in cash that she said Elijah had with him when she left him at the hotel bar. Based on all of this information, Jamie and David came up with an alternative explanation for Elijah's death. They theorized that sometime after Jamie parted ways with Elijah on the night of his death, he wandered outside onto the beach, possibly to go for a walk. There, he either encountered some people who tried to rob him, or he otherwise found himself in a bad situation. A violent incident ensued, leading to Elijah being badly beaten. Jamie and David suggested that those responsible for beating Elijah had then tried to hide his body, shoving him into the bathroom window where he was later found. When they couldn't get him all the way through, they simply left him wedged in the window, possibly believing that he was already dead. Either unconscious or unable to free himself, Elijah had suffocated after being abandoned there. A variation of this same theory goes that Elijah managed to escape the initial violent encounter and crawled into the window himself while trying to hide because he feared for his life. Upon getting stuck, he was similarly unable to free himself and died. Despite these seemingly plausible theories, investigators in Cancun continued to insist that there was no foul play involved in Elijah's death. While it's worth pointing out that this absolutely could be the case, it doesn't explain why authorities have seemingly been so reluctant to share evidence with Elijah's family, or their apparent haste and steadfast resistance towards exploring alternative explanations of the case. After months of repeated appeals to investigators and officials within the Mexican government, Elijah's family was apparently provided with select pieces of surveillance video and still images taken from surveillance cameras at the Royalton. However, based on information the family posted online, this merely consisted of footage of Elijah and Jamie at the bar before Elijah's death. According to the most recent public update the family posted in April of this year, no such footage has been provided from the Sunset Royal Beach Hotel, despite the fact that numerous cameras allegedly exist along all of the routes Elijah would have needed to take to get to the window where he was found. In that same April message, the family also announced that authorities in Mexico had officially closed the case, stating that no further investigation would be undertaken because no crime had been committed. At the current time, this is more or less the frustrating point at which the case remains. In the months since, Jamie, David, and other members of the Snow family have continued to make requests to reopen the investigation, reaching out to officials both within Mexico and the United States. So far, all of these requests have been denied, including one to get the FBI involved in the case. The American officials who have responded to the Snow family say that their hands are tied until law enforcement agencies like the FBI are formally invited by Mexican authorities to assist with the case. And at the time of this recording, That seems unlikely to happen unless Elijah's story catches the attention of those at the very top of the US government. To this end, the Snow family has created a Change.org petition seeking to get President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland directly involved in Elijah's case. We'll leave a link to that petition in the comment section below. As for our personal thoughts on the Elijah Snow case, while we obviously can't know for certain whether or not he was the victim of a crime, it seems to us that there's more than enough here that at least warrants further investigation. In our opinion, this is true even if Elijah's death does ultimately turn out to be an accident, as regardless, there are still plenty of unanswered questions about the situation as a whole. In the past, we've covered stories that have similarly taken place in areas that rely heavily on tourism dollars to sustain the local economy, so we can at least understand in theory why Mexican officials would want Elijah's death to be an accident, and for the case to be closed as quickly as possible, given the negative press these kinds of stories generate. However, even in this light, the actions of local investigators appear questionable, as it seems they have been reluctant even to share information and evidence that could prove their theory of the case. Sadly, it appears that even if the investigation into Elijah's death is reopened, his family will be fighting an uphill battle for justice. As almost a year has passed since his death, much of the physical evidence in the case has been destroyed, including perhaps most crucially, Elijah's body. When Jamie was back in Cancun, she was reportedly forced to make the impossible choice between respecting her husband's final wishes and preserving evidence. Apparently, Elijah had wanted to be cremated, so she followed through with these wishes. According to reports, in order for Elijah's body to be flown back to the United States, he would have had to have been embalmed anyway before being transported, which would have also destroyed a great deal of physical evidence. That being said, it really seems like Jamie was put in an impossible position and forced to make a choice that no one should ever have to make. At the end of the day, all we know for certain is that Elijah Snow's life was cut tragically short under what remain highly mysterious circumstances. Though figuring out what happened to him on that fateful summer night will not bring him back, it might bring some semblance of closure to his friends and family, who no doubt have a massive hole left in their lives by his sudden and tragic absence. Hopefully, by continuing to spread awareness about his case, it will lead to sustained public interest that will finally push officials in both the United States and Mexico to take a second look. Now that you've heard the whole story, though, what do you think? Is there anything you think we missed or left out? Let us know in the comments section below. While you're there, if you enjoyed our video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our future releases. And as always, thank you for watching.